and welcome to the Art of Being Human. We've been talking about bullying behavior, and today I really kind of want to focus on what to do about it. We've talked about it. We've talked about what bullies are like, how they can be classified, who gets bullied, why they get bullied, the psychodynamics of the bully, where they may be harassed at home and have harsh punishment, and that kind of adds to the problem, how to help a child who is weaker or smaller or not quite as strong through the bullying procedure, what to do for them and help them. But I want to go into some ideas about stopping bullying behavior. This is our next step, and this is critically important because it can't be allowed to continue. If it's allowed to continue, the bullies become criminals in a certain percentage of cases, a pretty high percentage of cases, so the various research shows, and everybody else that's being bullied becomes despondent, depressed, and many times even attempts suicide. So it's something we have to stop. There is such a thing as cognitive intervention. Now, cognitive means mind. Cognitive intervention is when children are taught not to bully. They need to have classes. This is what we do not do. As human beings working together in the same environment, we do not bully people. This is not fair. This is not the best morals. We just don't do it. So we teach children, and there are techniques of doing that, not just what I'm saying here, but a lot more techniques than what I have right here at my fingertips. Children are taught not to bully, and they are taught social problem solving and negotiating to solve conflicts. If you can negotiate to solve a conflict, then you can avoid an argument. You can avoid distress on the playground. You can avoid children kicking each other and punching each other. You know, children have a limited ability for understanding what to do when something bothers them. And if a child is frustrated, what are they going to do? They're going to punch somebody out. They're going to hit another child. They don't have the skills to sit down and say, this is bothering me, let's talk it out, let's do something about it, let's negotiate. I can remember when I was babysitting two children, and they were really good kids, but once in a while there would be the arguments. I want to do this, I want to do that. No, you don't. Well, I think it's my turn. Well, you had your turn yesterday, and on and on and on it goes. It never stops. So I sat them down, and I would say something like, okay, this is what happened yesterday. This is what we did. This person had their chance to do what they wanted to do. Now, I want to do something that you want to do so that nobody felt left out. When I was babysitting my twin sister's children, she had 6 children, and she was working part-time, and I was a graduate student, and I had the time to be able to babysit her children from the time that they got home from school to the time that she got home from work. And I would sit them down, they were coming home from school, and I would have chocolate milk for them, already prepared. All they had to do was sit down and drink it. And I would have cookies and some things like that. And they would come in and I'd say, okay, you've spent all day in school. That's the workplace, you know. School is a child's workplace. I want you to sit down, relax, let's have a snack, let's talk. And they would sit down, they loved chocolate milk, so I made sure it was available for them. And then I would say, tell me what happened in school today. Just a general question. Every child, 6 of them, started talking at once. Well, I did this, I did that. I couldn't keep up with all 6 at the same time, but I pretended that I could. So I'd listen to one comment, ask a question, make a comment, listen to somebody else, ask a question, maybe make a comment, and just interchange in some way with all 6 of them. Within 10 minutes, they were calm. They'd had whatever was bottled up inside had been expressed. It was out. They didn't have to hold it inside of themselves and then get into a fight with one of their brothers or sisters because they got angry about something. We talked, they felt better, everything was released, and then they could go on their way. I didn't want them doing homework right away. That was my rule, no homework for at least a half an hour. Why? Children work in school all day long. That's, in a sense, their job. And they work and work and work with all the tensions going on. It's like having a job. And then what happens when they go home? They sit down and they work some more. No one wants to have an 8-hour workday and then go home and then have another 8-hour workday doing homework. That's like having 2 jobs at once. There's got to be a break. There's got to be a way these children can relieve themselves of the frustration of the day and take a break and then get back to the homework later. When I was a teacher, I gave very, very little homework, very little, because I think most of the work could be done in school. And when it was done in school, they needed to have a break. And on vacations, a lot of the teachers loaded down the students with homework to be done on vacation. And I refused to do that. This is vacation time. Children need that vacation time. Parents need vacation time. They need to be able to go to the beach or take a trip to Florida on vacation or whatever they want to do without having to be hamstrung by, you've got to bring this book, you've got to read this chapter. You know, maybe my philosophy of teaching is a little different, but I think I got good results from my students. And they never hesitated to come to school. They never hesitated to be with me. They would run to me when they saw me. And it was a joy to teach them because I was treating them in such a way that they knew that they were valued. No, I'm not saying never give homework. But I'm saying be reasonable. If a child has spent 8 hours a day in school, he doesn't need to spend 8 hours a day doing homework at night. That's not reasonable. So this is the way I handled it. I did a lot of things differently when I taught than some other teachers do. I would even tell them, say for a test, this is just an aside, it doesn't have anything to do with this, but while I'm thinking about it, I would tell them, I wouldn't give them the questions that were going to be on the test, but I would tell them what to study for the test. This is what the test will cover. This, and this, whatever it was. And if you study those things, then you'll be all set for the test. You know, some teachers would say, give me the title of the book. Who authored the book? What year was the book published, talking about the textbook they were using. And that doesn't mean anything at all. What you want them to know is what you're trying to teach. So I used to give notes. If they knew my notes, if they knew what I asked them to learn, then they wouldn't have a problem on the test. And so that's the way I operated it. And there were other things I did too, and I don't want to get into it now because it's not a teaching class, but I think you show respect for your students, they will show respect for you. So children can be taught not to bully, and you teach social problem-solving skills so that conflicts can be managed. And teachers have a problem with this, but it's not their fault. They have to teach students a kind of thinking that their parents are not teaching at home. Sometimes when a teacher teaches some values at school, which I think are important and children need to learn for the sake of their own safety and for the sake of respecting other students, their parents won't reinforce that at home. In fact, sometimes you're teaching against what a home would teach, against what a parent would teach. And that means that it's very hard for a child to learn it because they're not experiencing it at home. If the parents will reinforce what the teachers are teaching, then they'll learn it a lot faster. But if the teachers have to fight against the home environment all the time, then what can you do? And what can you do to help children change if the parents won't support that? It's a very hard thing to do. Now, bullies don't want to change because they're admired by other students. They're admired because they can be stronger, they can do what they want to do, and children at first admire them. They don't want to change. So it's harder to teach them not to bully because you're not teaching something that they want to hear. It's always hard to teach something that somebody doesn't want to hear, child or adult. So bullies want to be admired, and they don't stop bullying. Even when they start losing friends, they don't stop bullying. Victims have trouble making friends who will support them because they may be weaker, they may be smaller. And to get victims to support them, that's hard to do, to get friends to support them because you're supporting a child, another child is supporting another child that's weaker, and that's not something that is easy to do. Pamphlets can be sent home to parents for their awareness. Classes in bullying should be taught to the parents as well as to the children. And there has to be a way to befriend the lonely child and teaching children not to attack each other. It's a hard thing to do. If they're not getting that kind of education at home, if their parents aren't watchful and helping them, then it's a hard thing for them to learn. Now, teachers and parents have to be taught to recognize bullying and its effects. Bullies will give excuses for why they do it. I do it because I want to do it. I do it because this person is not a nice person. This person is a jerk. This person is a nerd. You know, I'm doing it because they need it, because I don't like them. There's no excuse for bullying, absolutely no excuse for it. But these are some of the excuses that a bully will give. I don't like them. They bother me. I'm going to hit them. And they don't really see anything wrong in that. So somehow the word has to get out to children and to their parents that bullying is not going to be tolerated. And you have to do it from a sense of power. No one can accomplish anything from a sense of weakness. I can remember when I was working somewhat with the legislature in the state, because we were trying to pass a fair and equitable counseling certification law. And I just assumed in my naivety that legislators would do the right thing because they had been voted into office, and I assumed that they had good moral character and they would do what was right. And I was surprised to find out that people do things out of a sense of power or out of the sense of the power it will give them. Now, I'm not saying that all legislators aren't moral people, but I know that power talks, and people suck up the power. People want to do what's powerful for them because they want to be in a position of power. And if they have to deny part of their own moral structure in order to gain power, they will do so. So when you work with somebody, you have to do it from your own sense of power. And it has to be, I think, a morally right choice. I would never teach somebody something that I didn't agree with myself, because I believe that morals count. We do not hurt other people. This is not the way that it is supposed to be, and we don't do it. It is the right thing not to bully. It is not the right thing to bully. Even if you feel like it, doesn't mean you have the right to do it. If you're in a store and that little trinket looks really good and maybe you can slip it in your pocket and nobody will know, you don't do it. You don't do it because you know that's stealing and that's the wrong thing to do. Never mind that you might be caught. Or maybe you won't be caught. It doesn't matter. You have to stand up for what you believe is right and act in accordance for that. And you know, children learn what they live. If a parent tells a child, you can't take that, it doesn't belong to you, and teaches them the difference between right and wrong, it certainly will help out. But a lot of parents are negligent. But I'm not just blaming parents. It's just some way that our society is lacking in moral structure today, which is one of the reasons why we've got an excess amount of bullying to begin with. So bullies will give excuses, and the victims of bullying are afraid that they will be punished or that the bullying will become worse. If I'm a weak child and I'm being bullied, I may want to do something about it. I may want to say something about it. I may want an adult to stand up for me, but I'm afraid to do it because if somebody finds out that I've said something, their bullying will be worse. So we have to keep a full eye on who is being bullied and who is doing the bullying, and make sure it doesn't repeat itself, and make sure that the one who is injured or hurt by this is safe to talk about it, that nothing's going to happen to them that's bad because of something. You know, I've worked with a lot of women who are abused. I've even helped women who are abused take off and separate from their husbands because physically they were in danger. And it's been frightening for them to do that, because in order to do that, they have to be strong enough to take what seems like the risk. And the biggest risk they think they're taking is that their abusive husbands will find out, come after them, and make it much, much worse. We have to make it safe for them to leave so that their husbands will not be able to come after them. And they have to be safe so that they can talk about it. They have to be safe to recover from it. And so that's a part of what we have to do in society that we're not doing enough of it now. So victims are afraid of reprisals. We need more supervision of lunchrooms, recesses, bathrooms. You know, we need to have counseling for victims, for the bullies themselves, for their parents. And these things, various programs have been tried, and it's reduced bullying by 50%, which is a significant amount. It doesn't take care of the whole problem, but give it enough time, and it would take care of a higher percentage as time goes on. Most children feel left out at certain times of their lives, but the children who are bullied feel left out most of the time. They are the ones to get bullied, and that's a sad thing. Now, as I said in the last segment, we can't expect teachers to do it all. The parents have to take a good part of it, because after all, it's their children that are either becoming bullies or are being bullied. And that's a sad thing, and it has to be dealt with. The problem in terms of the teaching is that teachers are so busy. My schedule, I'm just going to kind of review this. As a first-year teacher, I had 5 separate lesson preparations every single day. I wasn't teaching one class and teaching it 3 or 4 times a day, which would mean one preparation. I had 5 separate preparations every single day. I had the cheerleaders. I had to arrange for their rehearsals. I had to be their coach. I had to go to all of their games. Some of their games might be 2 or 3 hours away from the school or the town where we lived, so I'd have to go with them, and I'd have to take care of them on the bus, and I'd have to monitor them during the games. I didn't have a chance to do a lot of preparation on those days that I had to be away for away games. And on top of that, I had homeroom activities. I had to take care of everything that went on in the homeroom. And for some reason, I was elected to be the advisor for the senior class. That meant I had to take care of a lot of the senior activities, prepare the students for graduation, and all of that. And what happens with the first-year teachers, they usually give them all of the problematic students to teach. So if a child has a behavior problem, well, I've dealt with it long enough, let the new teacher handle it. So you get a group of children that are not well behaved, that are presenting problems, in addition to everything that you're already doing. This is insane. And I think the schedule of first-year teachers is insane, and the problem is they've had no experience as far as full-time teaching is concerned. They may have had cadet teaching, or they've had some kind of an apprentice program, but that's not the real thing. That's only a taste of the real thing. And so what happens is they've got much, much more on their plate than any reasonable person can handle, and it happens day after day after day. And then not only do they have all of that in the school day, they have to go back home and prepare classes for the following day. At the end of my first year of teaching, I nearly left teaching. And I love to teach, and I always have. But the burdens on me was so great. I had so much to do and no preparation in terms of cadet teaching that meant anything that would help me. I was just overwhelmed. And at some point, I thought, I don't think I'll teach anymore. I took an exam that was very, very difficult to pass, but I passed it. I took an exam to become a social worker. I did not have hardly any social work experience or courses, but I had a degree in psychology, which is a related field, of course. And so I took that test and I passed it, and they were ready, the social work people were ready to hire me on as a social worker. But I really did like to teach, so the principal kind of talked me into staying for another year. We'll make sure that your schedule is easier next year. And I did stay on to teach, and I'm glad I did, because I think teaching is my first passion. It's what I love outside of music. It's what I love the most. But you can see that how much it is hard for a teacher to be able to take care of everything. And then you add on all of the things, the fights in the playground, the children who are being bullied, talking to the children who are being bullied, talking to the children who are the bullies, trying to contact their parents, trying to make sense of it all. It's just way too much for a teacher to handle, and to expect teachers to do it all, and then children come to school with no breakfast, so the school's trying to arrange breakfast for children, and you know, their parents are sometimes negligent, and I'm not talking about all parents at all. I'm talking about some parents, not all parents. And so it gets to be so difficult to really be a good teacher. And on top of that, the rules and regulations are such that if you touch a child, say a child comes to me and they're crying, well, it would be my tendency to put my hand on their shoulder, you know, not doing anything except touching them gently to give them some comfort. I could be accused of child molestation. You know, it's because the laws are so strict. So I think we've gone beyond what's common sense into fairyland. You know, it's just not right. And so it is very difficult for the school to handle everything. It's very difficult for the teachers to handle everything. And we must get together somehow and teach what's right and what's wrong, and the parents have to be involved in more than just a negative way. Sometimes parents always react against the school. It's got to be the teacher's fault. They should have done this, they should have done that. Well, teachers are human beings too, and the parents do have responsibilities. So now I've gotten that off my chest. We don't have too much time left. Bullies will give excuses, and the victims are afraid of reprisals, and we need all of this. We need more supervision, and I've talked about this already. And we need counseling for everybody that's involved in the process of bullying, and the fact that children do feel left out. And it's a natural thing, but bullying should never be a natural thing. There are people who feel that, well, everybody gets bullied, and this is a part of the childhood experience, and you have to get used to it and deal with it. And I say, no, it's hurtful. When you get children afraid to go to school, when you get children who want to commit suicide because they can't stand the thoughts of going to school for another day, there's no useful learning that occurs in a situation like that. Things have to be done. And I know that I will continue with this next time because we're practically out of time. But I'm spending my time doing all of this because it is such a serious problem, and it's leading into some of the violence that we see in society today. Something has to be done. So I'll leave it here, and we'll continue next time. Please join me then.